Right now, as you are watching this video, there is a silent electrical mistake that could be happening inside your chest, without any pain, without any warning, and without you ever knowing it. And that single mistake is one of the fastest ways your brain can die. Most people think strokes start in the brain. They do not. For millions of people, the first domino that leads to a stroke begins much earlier, inside the heart, in total silence. And today, you are going to see exactly how a tiny flutter in your chest can shut down the very organ that defines who you are. To understand the disaster, we first have to understand the design. Think of your body as a sprawling metropolis. The brain is the city center. It requires a massive amount of electricity to keep the lights on. In fact, despite weighing only about 3 pounds, your brain demands 20% of the oxygen-rich blood your heart pumps out every single minute. This electricity is delivered via the carotid arteries, 2 massive pipes running up the sides of your neck. When the system works, it is a miracle of engineering. The heart beats in a perfect, rhythmic lub-dub. It squeezes, pushing blood smoothly through the aorta and up into the brain. The brain cells, or neurons, drink up the oxygen and glucose, allowing you to speak, move, and think. But let me introduce you to Arthur. Arthur is 55 years old. He is a father, a grandfather, and a man who prides himself on being tough. Arthur felt a strange fluttering in his chest a few months ago. It felt like a fish flopping around inside his rib cage. It lasted for 10 seconds, then stopped. He ignored it. He thought it was too much coffee. Arthur did not know that this fluttering was the first crack in the foundation. It was the sound of the engine starting to fail the architect. But why does a fluttering heart matter to the brain? To answer that, we have to shrink down to the microscopic level and look at the physics of fluids. This brings us to the most common villain in our story, atrial fibrillation. You might hear doctors call this AFib. Normally, the top chambers of the heart, called the atria, squeeze efficiently to push blood down into the bottom chambers. It is a strong, coordinated kick. But in Arthur's heart, electrical signals have gone haywire. Instead of a strong squeeze, the top chambers are just quivering. They are trembling like a bag of worms. When the heart quivers instead of pumping, the blood inside does not move fast enough. And here is a rule of human biology you must remember. Blood that does not move clots. Imagine a rushing river. The water is clear and fast. Now imagine a stagnant pond where the water sits still. Algae and sludge start to form. That is exactly what happens in the left atrium of the heart. The blood pools in a small nook called the left atrial appendage. But not all left atrial appendages are the same. Some are simple and smooth, shaped like a narrow windsock. Others are twisted, folded, or full of deep pockets, like a cauliflower with hidden chambers. And the more complex this structure is, the more places blood can hide, more corners, more shadows, more places where a clot can form undisturbed. This is why 2 people can have the same rhythm problem, yet one suffers a stroke while the other never does. The difference is often in the anatomy they were born with, an invisible architectural detail that silently shapes their fate. Red blood cells and platelets start sticking together, layer by layer, forming a gelatinous clump. This is a thrombus, or a blood clot. Arthur feels fine now. The fluttering stopped. But inside his chest, he is now carrying a loaded weapon. What Arthur did not know is that the danger does not come from how dramatic the flutter feels. Sometimes, the most lethal form of this rhythm problem does not feel like anything at all. It is called silent atrial fibrillation. Silent atrial fibrillation behaves like an uninvited guest, one that slips quietly into your home after midnight, walks through the rooms without turning on a single light, and leaves before the sun rises. You wake up the next morning completely unaware that anything happened. You stretch, you brush your teeth, you make your coffee, and you move through your day believing everything is normal. But during the night, your heart may have quivered for only 60 seconds, just long enough for blood to pool, just long enough for a tiny clot to begin its silent formation. People who live with this ghost often say the same thing. I felt normal. I slept fine. I thought it was stress. But this ghost does not need your permission. It appears when you are resting, when you are cooking, when you are scrolling through your phone. It leaves no pain, no warning, no trace on a morning EKG. And yet with each invisible visit, it prepares the conditions for disaster, shaping a clot that waits in total silence for the one heartbeat strong enough to launch it upward. This is the cruelty of the ghost rhythm. It steals the future on a night when you believed you were safe. It strikes in brief bursts, sometimes only for a few minutes. It can appear while you are asleep, while you are cooking, or while you are scrolling through your phone. It comes and goes, leaving no trace unless the heart is monitored for days or weeks. People with silent AFib often say the same thing. I felt fine. Maybe a little tired. I thought it was stress. But during one of these invisible bursts, the atria quiver just long enough for a clot to form. And by the time the rhythm returns to normal, the clot is already sitting quietly in the left atrial appendage, waiting for the moment it will be launched toward the brain. It is a ghost rhythm. It leaves no warning, no pain, and no second chance. A clot, perhaps the size of a dime, is sitting there, waiting. All it takes is one strong heartbeat to eject that clot out of the heart and into the bloodstream. And when it leaves, where does it go? That is the terrifying question we will answer next. I want to pause here for just a second. We are about to trace the journey of this clot, and it is crucial information. If you are finding value in this deep dive into your own anatomy, please take a moment to subscribe and click the like button. It helps us spread this life-saving information to more people. And tell me in the comments, have you or a loved one ever experienced that fluttering sensation Arthur felt? Let's continue. Inside Arthur's chest, the clot sits in absolute stillness, like a stone at the edge of a cliff, waiting for gravity to decide its fate. As long as it remains tucked inside the left atrial appendage, Arthur is safe. But blood flow is never still. It surges, it shifts, it accelerates without warning. And in one normal heartbeat, the pressure changes just enough to break the clot free. This is the moment a clot becomes an embolus, no longer a passenger, but a projectile. It is ejected out of the heart with incredible velocity, propelled by the full force of Arthur's own blood pressure. As it shoots forward, the bloodstream becomes a system of branching choices. Downward toward the legs, sideways toward the organs, or upward toward the most oxygen-hungry organ of all, the brain. Physics makes the decision for it. The upward path is the straightest. The pressure there is the highest. The angle is the most direct. And so the clot follows the inevitable route, riding the current toward the carotid artery. It travels faster than a blink, faster than a thought, carried by the very pump designed to sustain life. At this point, the clot has only one question left to answer. Which artery will be the one it shuts down? The moment happens on a Tuesday morning while Arthur is drinking his tea. His heart gives a strong contraction. The clot is dislodged. It is now an embolus. That is the medical term for a clot on the move. It shoots out of the left ventricle and enters the aorta, the body's main superhighway. From here, it has a choice. It could go down to the legs or to the kidneys. But because of the high pressure and the direct angle of the vessels, there is a very high probability it will shoot upward. It enters the carotid artery. It travels up the neck faster than you can blink. As the arteries travel up into the skull, they branch out like a tree, getting narrower and narrower. The clot travels until it hits a vessel that is too small for it to pass through. Usually, this is the middle cerebral artery. This artery supplies the parts of the brain responsible for movement in the hands and face, and the areas responsible for speech. The clot slams into the vessel wall and stops. It acts like a cork in a wine bottle. Instantly, the blood flow ceases. The highway is closed. The city center has lost its power. This is the moment of impact. This is what we call an ischemic stroke. But what actually happens to the brain cells? This is where we need to get a little advanced, because understanding this explains why time is so critical. When the blood stops, the neurons are starved of oxygen. Without oxygen, they cannot make energy. Without energy, the tiny pumps that keep the cell balanced fail. Toxic chemicals, specifically calcium and sodium, flood into the brain cells. The cells begin to swell and eventually explode. This is called the ischemic cascade. However, the damage doesn't happen to the whole area all at once. There is a core area where cells die in minutes. But surrounding that dead core is a larger area called the penumbra. These cells are stunned. They are starving. They are gasping for air, but they are still alive. They are receiving a tiny bit of blood from collateral vessels, side roads that bypass the blockage. This penumbra is what doctors are fighting for. If we can dissolve the clot or pull it out quickly, those stunned cells can wake up. If we wait too long, the penumbra dies and the damage becomes permanent. For Arthur, this manifests instantly. He drops his teacup. He tries to say, "I dropped it," but the words come out as a garbled slur. The right side of his face droops. His right arm feels like dead weight. The silent assassin has struck. While atrial fibrillation is a massive cause, the heart has other ways of hurting the brain. We must be thorough here. Sometimes it is not a rhythm problem, but a structural one. Some people are born with a tiny tunnel between the right and left side of the heart, known as a patent foramen ovale. It is essentially a hole in the heart that never closed after birth. Usually, the lungs filter out small clots from our veins. But if you have this hole, a clot can bypass the lungs, slip through the hole, and head straight for the brain. This is often the cause when young, healthy people have strokes. Other times, the problem is the pipes themselves. The aorta, or the carotid arteries, can become lined with plaque, a buildup of cholesterol and calcium. If a piece of this hard plaque breaks off, it behaves exactly like the blood clot we discussed. It travels up and blocks the brain. This is why heart health, managing cholesterol and blood pressure, is synonymous with brain health. You cannot protect one without protecting the other. But there is another layer to this story, one that even many doctors overlook. In some people, the problem is not the rhythm at all. It is the tissue. Over years of high blood pressure, inflammation, or genetic predisposition, the left atrium can stretch, thicken, or scar. This condition is called atrial cardiopathy, and it turns the atrial wall into the perfect soil for a clot to grow, even if the heartbeat itself still appears normal on an EKG. Imagine a house where the wiring still works, but the walls are crumbling from the inside. That is what atrial cardiopathy does to the heart. In these patients, the clot is not the result of chaos in the electricity. The clot is the result of a structural weakness that has been developing for years, silently preparing the conditions for disaster. By the time symptoms appear, the clot may already be there, just waiting for the right heartbeat to send it upward. Arthur was lucky. His wife recognized the signs immediately. She remembered the acronym FAST: face drooping, arm weakness, speech difficulty, time to call emergency services. Because she acted fast, doctors were able to administer a powerful clot-busting medication and perform a procedure to physically remove the clot from his brain. The blood flow was restored. The penumbra, that starving territory of brain cells, was saved. Arthur regained his speech. But Arthur's story is a warning. The connection between your heart and brain is fragile. That fluttering sensation? It is a conversation your body is trying to have with you. High blood pressure? It is the pressure that weakens the pipes. Do not wait for the silence. Listen to the engine. If you have palpitations, if you have a family history of heart disease, or if you simply haven't had a checkup in years, go see a physician. Ask them to check your rhythm. Ask them about your stroke risk. The heart and brain are partners. Keep the partnership healthy, and you protect the very essence of who you are. If this video helped you understand your body better, please share it with someone you love. You might just save a life. I will see you in the next video.